The Ukrainian president, I can tell you, is the baddest guy ever Donald Trump ever confronted. And I can tell you that this guy hung Donald Trump today, publicly humiliated Donald Trump on his own turf, in his own house. Make him show the world that Donald Trump is nothing but a little boy in a man's body. For the first time in history, a foreign leader has publicly humiliated Donald Trump on his own turf, exposing him as nothing more than a feeble, insecure figure who crumbles under the weight of real leadership. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, a man forged in the fires of war and unwavering in his commitment to democracy, and a man of steel, did not hold back. His presence in the White House today was not just symbolic. It was a masterclass in strength, integrity, and moral authority. And in that moment, Trump, who was built his entire persona on bluster and intimidation, looks like nothing more than a small, petulant child confronted by a real man. For those of us who value decency, truthfulness, honesty, and the rule of law, witnessing Zelensky eviscerated Trump and his enablers, J.D. Vance, and the Antichrist Elon Musk, was nothing short of refreshing. It was a stark reminder that true leadership is not about grandstanding or peddling conspiracy theories, but also standing firm in the face of adversity. While Donald Trump and his allies, have spent years cozying up to Vladimir Putin, undermining democratic institutions and attacking the very foundation of American governance, Zelensky has been fighting literally for the survival of his nation and the principles of freedom. The contrast could not be clearer. But this moment is bigger than just an embarrassing episode for Trump. It is an harbinger of what it is to come. The tide is turning, and those who have aligned themselves with authoritarianism, corruption, and betrayal of democratic ideals will soon find themselves on the losing side of history. The American people are waking up to the reality of what is at stake, democracy itself. It is a matter of time before the forces of justice and accountability advance towards the White House, exposing Trump and his acolytes for what they truly are: grifters, opportunists, and cowards. When that reckoning comes, there will be no Mar-a-Lago safe haven, no shield of political power to protect them. They will have to flee to Russia. Instead, they will find themselves scrambling, searching for an escape, perhaps even fleeing to Russia, where their allegiance has long been evident. But no amount of exile will erase the truth. The world see them for who they are, and history will remember them, not as patriots, but as traitors who stood on the wrong side of justice. So we're going to let you watch, MSNBC, John Bolton, they, dissecting everything that happened and show that Donald Trump is just a little boy. Nothing but a little boy, a grown man who have the mind of a little boy. So you watch, you listen, and you decide.
We are joined by John Bolton by phone. He was National Security Advisor to Donald Trump during the events that led to Trump's first impeachment. John Bolton, hello. I want to play some sound that you and I were talking about. This is Marco Rubio and others on Putin and Zelensky before today's Oval Office ambush.
Russia is governed today by a gangster. He's basically an organized crime figure who controls a government in a large territory. There's no other way to describe Vladimir Putin.
I think this entire invasion has been irrational. It's hard to understand what is actually being fed into Putin in terms of intelligence and reporting and how much of his own propaganda he believes.
What's at stake is repelling an authoritarian who basically is saying, I want the Soviet Union back, I want Ukraine back, I want Kiev back. And then what's at stake is making sure we don't allow it to become an Article 5 larger, broader war than that.
John Bolton, your thoughts on folks, some of whom I imagine you know pretty well, today turning on a stalwart American ally fighting a clearly defined and understood American adversary.
Yeah, this is really one of the most disgraceful performances that I've seen, and I think it's important to understand that, in particular, Trump and Vance own this personally. This is the kind of attack on a country that's defending itself from an unprovoked aggression, and they just unleashed on Zelensky in public. And whether they planned it or not, I don't know. I'm not that concerned with questions of etiquette. I am concerned that the president, vice president of the United States have sided with the aggressor, with, as Mike Waltz was just saying there, somebody who's trying to recreate the Russian Empire, something he's been very clear about since 2005 at least. And now you have, sadly, both Mike Waltz and Marco Rubio in the administration and apparently staying. I just say, remember, this is not the second month of Trump's tenure. This is the 50th month of his 2-year term. And this is the point when somebody does 180 degrees from understanding American allies to backing America's adversaries, that you resign.
Mark, are you saying Marco Rubio should resign?
And Mike Waltz, this is really the time to do it. If they don't get out now, I think their reputations will suffer for a long, long time. And that would be sad, because their record in believing in a strong American national security policy has been very good up until now.
I mean, let me show you what Lindsey Graham had to say literally 12 days ago to Zelensky's face, and then I'll show you some of what he had to say today.
I want to tell you and your people, you're the ally I've been hoping for all my life. Not one American has died defending Ukraine. You've taken our weapons and you've kicked their ass. And I'm very proud to have you as our ally. So, what do I think? Complete, utter disaster. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
John Bolton, what do you think of Lindsey Graham right now?
It just, this is a line that the White House must have put out. Unfortunately, I see a lot of Republicans talking about it. But as I said a few seconds ago, this is not a question of etiquette. I could say that it was Trump and Vance that provoked it. It doesn't really matter what happened. This is, number one, not the kind of discussion you have in public. Trump could have cut it off at any point, which leads, I think, people to speculate maybe this is what he wanted. In World War II, neither Franklin Roosevelt nor Winston Churchill were terribly enamored of Charles de Gaulle for good and sufficient reasons, but he was the leader of the Free French, and against the Nazi regime in Germany, he was our ally. In this case, it is Zelensky who is standing up for a country that only is asking for its independence and freedom to be preserved. Trump has said Zelensky is a dictator who provoked the war. It's an alternative universe. What you heard from Trump and Vance today was advancing the Russian position in these negotiations.
I want to see if John Brennan agrees with you. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess this might be an instance in which that is the case, John Brennan.
I've been agreeing with John Bolton regularly over the past several years, because I think he saw up close and personal the damage and the danger that Donald Trump presents to our national security. It is clear from today's events that either Trump and Vance are ignorant of world history or are intentionally ignoring it. And their naivete when it comes to Russia and their amateurish attitude in terms of diplomacy, it really just worries me. And I think it worries John Bolton. It worries a lot of people who have worked over the years to try to keep this country strong, safe, and prosperous. But Donald Trump looks at the world through a very transactional, mercantilist prism. And I fear what he's doing is carving up the world into spheres of influence. And he's basically saying to Vladimir Putin, okay, you can have Ukraine, you can have the eastern part of Europe. And it does send a very chilling message to all of our allies and partners. And what message does it send to President Xi of China? We're not really going to care about the Taiwan, and, if we make a deal, he prides himself on being the deal maker, but he just throws to the side all of the many years of American values and principles that really have undergirded global stability and security. And Donald Trump, in this meeting today, I think demonstrates he's not interested in that. He is interested in only doing what it is that he believes, as a real estate developer, needs to get done. And it's atrocious, it's despicable, and things that Lindsey Graham says, spineless, unprincipled, and again, despicable.
Alex, you have a little bit of deja vu sitting here next to me.
I mean, first of all, I think that what I saw was maximum ignorance, maximum malice. I think some of the things that have been said by PM Turnbull, that this is about great powers and great powers carving up the world, the U.S. being the most important power in the system, but in the same breath marginalizing ourselves because we're cutting off one of the sources of our power, which is our alliances, both economic and security. And then ignorance on multiple different levels, ignorance on the facts, who started this war, and ignorance on how to solve problems for the United States, how to make the U.S. more secure. It is not by appeasing, it's not by serving Putin's interests, it's by supporting our allies, supporting Zelensky. What we could easily see is a Trump, if he was serving the U.S. interest and making wise decisions, is pushing Putin, who is teetering in certain ways, economically brittle, military taking massive losses, unsustainable for really much, much longer. They could weather another year or so, but putting maximum pressure. And, in this book, I took a look at a case study of 30 years of U.S. relationships with Russia and Ukraine, and it's shocking how many of these things are just being repeated over and over, succumbing to hopes and fears. Hopes that we could do more with Russia. That's what the Russians are dangling in front of Putin and Trump. Unsophisticated actors that can't seem to understand that, don't learn from the first 4 years, and fears what happens if the relationship devolves. And repeating the same mistakes in the poison Kool-Aid stage of mistakes, where we're really wrecking all our relationships. It is a little bit of deja vu. It reminds me of the days around that phone call where I went into where I organized the phone call and went into it with a sense of maybe hope, but a lot of foreboding that we would end up in a worst-case scenario. That materialized today. I'm sure those folks sitting in the White House, the professionals, felt the same way about this meeting that looked like it was all but cinched up, but was blown up by J.D. Vance. And now everybody, the whole world, has to deal with the consequences. I do feel it quite viscerally that we can't seem to learn from the mistakes of the past, focus on what really matters. It's really a sad day.
For the world, seeing that an American president has turned his back on democracy, but we know that Donald Trump was always a traitor. Always. We know that from the first election, when he never denounces Vladimir Putin, and those who are from countries where authoritarian rule, that Trump was always been seen as a traitor by people who can think. So, on February 28, 2025, the world witnessed a moment of political and moral clarity as Ukrainian President Zelensky stood his ground in the Oval Office, delivering a scathing rebuke to two of America's most controversial political figures, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, make them look like little boys. Yes, in doing so, Zelensky demonstrates not only the resilience and determination that has defined his leadership throughout Ukraine's struggle against Russian aggression, but also the kind of unwavering moral fortitude that exposes weakness in others. President Zelensky's presence in the White House was a stark contrast to the behavior of Trump and Vance, who appear outmatched and unprepared for a leader who has spent years defending his nation against Vladimir Putin, the thug, the criminal, the despot, who will rot in hell, relentless onslaught. Zelensky, a man of steel, forged in the crucible of war, exuded strength, decisiveness, and unwavering commitment to democratic values, qualities that seems utterly absent in Trump and Vance, who are nothing but two little men, two little babies, who in that moment look more like petulant children than statesmen. If anyone was still questioning the state of American politics, today's spectacle in the Oval Office offer a sobering answer. What's unfolded was nothing short of a national embarrassment for the world to see that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance were petulant children, not statesmen, children. A display of political cowardice that bordered on treasonous. The meeting underscored how far the Republican Party, once a party of Ronald Reagan, the man who demanded that the Soviet Union tear down the Berlin Wall, has fallen. The contrast could not have been clearer. Ronald Reagan stood against tyranny, while today's GOP leadership appear more willing to accommodate, excuse, or even embrace it. The real question now is it whether any remaining principal conservatives will speak out, or if they will continue to cower in silence as Trump and his acolytes flirt with betraying America's core democratic values. Zelensky's firm stance today serves as a reminder of what true leadership looks like, an inconvenient truth for those who prefer to bow to power rather than stand for what's right. The world is watching, and history will not forget these cowards. And we say, we stand with President Zelensky, and not Donald Trump or J.D. Vance, who are nothing but cowards and men babies.